Hey, what is up guys, JayTX here. This is going to be another update video about our Bleed Bow Witch Hunter that we league started. Currently our character has now hit level 92 and we're going to be pushing a little bit further. There was an update that dropped yesterday that actually had some huge changes to how the build played, and I'd like to talk about some of the changes now after the patch has gone live. The most notable change from this patch was the Combat Frenzy charge generation. So previously before the patch, it was around you could gain a frenzy charge when you freeze, electrocute, or pin an enemy no more than once every 5.1 seconds. With the most recent patch, it got brought all the way down to 1.65 seconds, which is actually insane. So what this means is, before, you'd have to wait 5 seconds before you could generate frenzies again. Now you only have to wait 1.65 seconds. So what does that actually mean for the build? Previously in the build, we had a bow shot setup with pin to generate our frenzy charges. So we would use bow shot to generate our frenzy charges, then we would use spiral volley to dump it. So it was kind of like a 2-button playstyle. With the new patch, because the time to generate frenzy charges is so low now, we can just put the pin and lockdown setup onto our spiral volley skill links, and now we can just permanently use spiral volley as both our generator and spender of frenzy charges. This just removes the need to have a second skill to actually generate charges, so all you're going to be doing is just spamming spiral volleys in maps. And because of that, we've also made some changes to the tree to really take advantage of how spiral volley works. So spiral volley, if people didn't know, is you get 20% more damage per frenzy charge consumed. You get 100% more damage if any frenzy charges are consumed at all, and you also get additional chains per frenzy charge consumed. So previously we had 3 frenzy charges that we were dumping, so it will give us 3 chains and 160% more damage. The new version of the build now uses 6 frenzy charges, so we get up to 220% more damage and 6 chains, which is absolutely insane. The clear for the skill already was really good, but now with the new update, it's actually pushed it through the roof. So before the patch, one of the things I've noticed when I was using Spiral Volley, particularly for breaches, is if you didn't get the reset with your perpetual charge, or let you keep your charges, it gets kind of dicey because you have to wait 5 seconds for your combat frenzy to generate more charges. Now that's not the case anymore with the changes, because the cooldown is so low for combat frenzy that as long as we're hitting targets, we'll be generating charges almost 90% of the time. So it feels really good in breaches because we don't have to play around our cooldown anymore. We can run towards any corner of the breach and absolutely dump our spiral volley and just shred things with our chains and with our damage now. Now the main thing I've been trying to fix over the last few days wasn't actually the clear for this build. The clear's always been pretty good with spiral volley and with our Witch Hunter explosions. This patch just made it go through the roof. The thing that I was trying to figure out was how do we actually make Snipe a viable endgame DPS skill? For our Snipe setup, we're currently running Window of Opportunity, Heft, Brutality, Conk Effect. Conk Effect actually is more damage for us because our crit creates Explosion, which is an area skill, so we get 40% more damage on that with Conk Effect. And our final one is Super Critical. There is also an option to swap in an Hourglass for 40% more damage, but you add a cooldown to your Snipe. So potentially if you're only going to be hitting one Snipe on a boss, then Hourglass is probably the way to go, it's probably more damage. But if you expect the fight to take a couple of snipes, then Super Critical gives you the damage without having to sacrifice a cooldown, but that's kind of up to you to see. I think with Hourglass, you can probably hit the hardest possible, but with Super Critical, you can have more snipes in a fight. On our Spiral Volley setup now, it's Perpetual Charge, Pin, Lockdown, and Martial Tempo. Our last gem could potentially be an Inspiration if the mana cost is ramping a bit too high for most builds. I potentially see myself using that when I get a 6 link, but for now it seems fine, and Inspiration doesn't give more damage just for mana. Our bow shot now is entirely irrelevant. It doesn't really matter what we run on this, so I'm just running Scatter Shot, Pierce, Life Thief for a bit of Leech, Exploit Weakness, and Execute. So these last 2 gems are generally just swappable between your other gems depending on the situation, but your bow shot is something you almost never use now in maps. On a Combat Frenzy setup, we have Profusion, Cannibalism, and Clarity, still the same as before. Wind Dancer is Blind, Maim, and Precision. Precision obviously is an optional one. I just like having it for a bit of more accuracy. And this is the big change to the build where we've added in a Barrage support. So in PoE 2, Barrage is no longer an attack and it's no longer a support. It's now a buff that empowers your next bow attack to repeat. So what this means is if I press Barrage, it gives me a little window here that you can see, and I have it up to until this bar ticks down to use that Barrage. It also gets additional repeats depending on how many frenzy charges we consume. So in our build, if we have 6 frenzy charges, we can consume that for 6 additional repeats, and then we also get 2 base. So now you may notice with the regular snipe, when we shoot it, it shoots a single arrow. Once we press Barrage, we shoot it, you see 3 arrows come out. Now, currently I've been doing a lot of testing to figure out whether or not it actually shotguns. If it does, it's an absolutely insane damage link. You want to be using this even if it doesn't shotgun, mainly for the fact that you get something called premeditation. So what it does is it gives you 15% more damage on your empowered skill. Just read this as when you press your barrage, premeditation also affects the next skill that you use. So this would, in this case, this would be snipe. This is 15% more damage on our snipe. Even if it doesn't shotgun, you want to be using the setup for 15% more damage on your snipe. And if it does shotgun, then it has insane potential for just one-tapping bosses. Moving on to the skill tree here. So there have been a couple tweaks to the skill tree, mainly to fit in frenzy charges to our build, because we are generating a lot of frenzies now with combat frenzy. So on this side, we've taken Fervor and we've taken Savagery. This is also good because we get evasion rating if we consume charges, which we are constantly doing. So these two are the new wheels that we've taken. We've dropped the blind wheel down here, and we've also dropped this DOT node down here. Both of these were good, but what I've noticed in maps is Wind Dancer plus a blind support already does a lot of the heavy lifting for blinding targets in your maps. And generally, I felt like this wasn't giving enough value for me to keep it. So we've just taken some more evasion nodes here as well. This will all be updated on my Mobalytics page, so you guys can have a look at the tree itself. And I've also taken Perfectly Placed Knife here. This is a good time to also talk about how we aggravate bleeds in our build. That's one of the main problems you have to solve in any bleed-based build. That's how do you reliably aggravate bleeds. Barrage also comes into the picture here. Because Barrage is tagged as an empower skill, there is a notable here called internal bleeding. So it just gives generic 30% increased damage on empowered attacks, but it also gives empowered attacks to get a 20% chance to aggravate bleeds. So that's actually really, really good for us. As long as we press our barrage, then we're adding a 20% chance to aggravate bleeds on our snipe, and also we get a 20% chance to aggravate on targets we critically hit, which snipe will be. If we hit a perfect snipe, it's another 20% chance. So between those two, that's 40% chance and a generic 10% chance here. We have a 50% chance to aggravate bleeds on our snipe. So these three nodes should give us more than enough aggravation chance for our bleeds. As long as we're hitting 1 or 2 snipes in a fight, the bleed should be getting aggravated. We don't normally care about aggravating bleeds in our spiral volley setup because with the frenzy charges and the more damage scaling, most of the time we're going to be blowing up packs before the aggravation even matters. So just keep that in mind that we still have a 10% chance to aggravate, so we use rain of arrows whenever we can to help, but we do have a very high chance now with our empowered snipe that when we hit a target, we're going to be aggravating it at a 50% rate. There have also been a couple of gear updates to the build. Namely, the big one here is Eris Vane's Wings. This gives us Decimating Strike, which you can see on our Ascendancy tree, is this node here, Judge, Jury, and Executioner. By taking these gloves, we can essentially drop this Ascendancy node and take No Mercy, which gives us 30% more damage based on the missing concentration for enemies. This one pair of gloves potentially lets us keep our Decimating Strike, but also take up to 30% more damage on our Ascendancy node. So I think it's a really, really powerful pair of gloves that lets us drop a whole Ascendancy node to pick up another one. Other than that, the gear itself, we've dropped Spirit off our chest because we didn't really need the extra Spirit for any additional setups. We just needed Combat Frenzy and Wind Dancer. So just look for high evasion life on your chest. Maybe a bit of stun threshold is good as well. Upgraded our bow since the last video. This is now 455 top end Fizz DPS on the bow. We're still looking to upgrade the bow, obviously. It's not perfect yet. We can go for a 500 plus, maybe 550 plus Fizz DPS bow, but the prices for those have kind of gone crazy with the change of how Divines to Exalts have gone. Our helmet is still the same. Our boots are still the same. Our rings, a little bit different now. We've got catalysts on it, which are essentially what the breach currency is. If you don't know, when you do breaches, you get a bunch of catalysts here. These are really powerful for resistances on rings. For example, if I get a fire modifier here, it not only increases the fire res on the ring, but it also affects all res. So I have 16 all res on this ring, which gets scaled to 19 with the fire modifier. Similarly, we have another ring here with lightning res. Also with the latest patch, it's actually been insane because they've given us 20% all res back. So if you're previously capped on a res before the patch, you now have 20% overcap. This is why we could just essentially take our old gloves out and swap it in, because we had so much overcapped reses that this doesn't really matter now in terms of what we get. So ideally I put Chaos Res onto this because I'm currently overcapped on fire and on cold, and we could push our Chaos Res up to 64 instead of using cold res here. I've been testing around with a bunch of different quivers. You probably see in my stash here that there's a lot of quivers that I've been testing with the build to figure out what's best for the build. I believe increased damage is really good, and projectile gems or projectile skills is really good. The other one we can use also is increased attack speed, so this makes our snipe and our spiral volley shoot a bit faster. But I believe the +2 projectile skills is actually a lot of damage to both our snipe and our spiral volley, so we've opted to keep in the projectile skills here. I think the optimal quiver would look like a really high flat fizz with increased damage with both skills, and then also projectile skill gem level, and maybe with crit damage for our snipe. But I think this quiver is really, really good already for our build, and I don't see the need to change it for a while. We've also made some updates with the jewels in our tree. So previously we had bleeding magnitude and bleeding duration. Now we've gone for chance to inflict bleeding on a hit. We want to be looking for rolls of at least 5% or higher because we can get 5% on the tree. So we're looking for 6 or 7% chance to inflict bleeding on hit, and then also getting 2 mods on top of that. So either bleeding duration or global physical damage, or bleeding duration or magnitude, whatever that you can find on jewels on trade. And obviously corrupting jewels has a lot of benefits. For example, I corrupted my own jewel here and got the immunity to corrupted blood. This is actually really cool that a lot of jewels get a lot of nice bonuses now. This one has plus 10 cold res, this one has plus 5 fire res. So essentially, what you're looking for on your jewels, if your bleed chance is not capped, you can cap it out now with the rest of the jewel slots you take. So look for 7% chance to bleed on your jewels, and then get a bunch of those, and then you'll cap out your bleed. It's a lot more efficient than taking just percent chance to bleed on your tree, because you get a bunch of extra bonuses as well on top of it. So this patch has been really good for our build. It's already pushed our pretty good clear into insanely good clear. Really excited that this build got buffed so much in the latest patch, and I'm really excited for you guys to try out this build if you haven't already. And if you are playing the build, I hope you're enjoying the new patches and the changes to this build. As always, guys, thank you guys for watching my video. I'll be streaming live on Twitch almost every single day at JayTX. We do have a new build coming up very soon where we'll be playing around with another bow skill on a different class. But for now, we're going to be pushing this class until it takes on all the bosses. As always, I have a Mobalytics page for this exact build. So if you want to have a look at the written version of this build, I'll be constantly making updates here. So you can see I make updates based on different patches and at different points of the build. So if you want updates about the build before waiting for videos, this is probably the best place to look. By the time this video comes up, this page should be updated with all new information. Thank you guys so much for the support on the last couple of videos and coming into my Twitch stream and saying hi. I really appreciate all of the support. I do this because I'm very passionate about both the build and the game. Really nice to see that people are interested in seeing the build like this. As always, guys, thanks for watching the video, and I will catch you guys in the next one.